this is it. We're in the headwaters now. They don't all look like this, but quite a few of them actually don't look that different. And while we're definitely too shallow to be holding any reasonable fish in here, I warmed up, took some practice casts anyhow. My new rod had some tweaks I needed to sort out. But
And they are not upset about me catching them 15 feet away from me. Fish are surfacing right here. That wasn't the fish I just caught. It was a little smaller. Anyway, fun times.
The truth is, I go full gonzo in this episode. I do the single worst job ever to record my catches, and it's kind of embarrassing. Per the usual, I talk too much. There's a little bit of luck of the draw, where I don't get the best catches on film, and in other cases, I'm just not that good at this yet, but I try to make the best out of it, and in fact, stick around, there is one catch that I sort of catch on film, dedicated to my nephew. That made the day. And I'm also going to be including some highlight footage. Gone and slowed down some highlight reel of previous catches, some of the better of the year. This is some of the footage my son shot of our previous father and son fishing day. And I've got some pretty fun stuff for you here, so check this out. Without giving away too much of the details, because I don't necessarily want to offer too much information for folks to pinpoint the location, what I've been able to determine is that these are naturally reproducing rainbows that were born here from what were formerly steelhead for the broodstock. And we've had, I would say, a summer of catching an average size fish of about 16 inches. These that I have here just about nail that size almost exactly. Maybe they shoot up to 17. You will see by the end of this video, if you stick around, that I kept a fish that I didn't manage to get on video at all in the most recent outing. However, it was the fish that I knew I was taking home that day. It was from a pool, as I'll mention a second time in the video, that was downstream. It's a much smaller pool that I was certain leaving that fish there would lead to stunting, because like I say, there's a series of ponds, that one being among the smaller. Getting that fish out of there will allow the smaller fish in there to continue growing and fill in its spot as the larger dominant fish in the pool. But in fact, I actually had the exact same outing. As the first two goes at this location, I hooked 6. However, I did actually take 2 home this time. You will see that out of the 2 fish that day that I managed to actually get on film, one of which sadly was a fish that I was doing a dead drop technique where I let the lure fall for a little bit, and in that amount of time the fish came in and buried it so deep that I hooked it in the gills and did some damage. So I decided to go ahead and keep that fish. It was I think like 15 and a half or so. You'll see it. I kept it perfect pan fry size, and that is one of the fish that we'll be featuring in the catch and cook towards the end of this episode. Stick around. Now, the one fish that I'm going to refer to over and over, and frankly you have no reason to believe me about, was the 5th fish of my last outing. It was the biggest from the location, biggest of the season for me, and yeah, a real nice fish. I was proud to catch. I was proud to let go very efficiently. It was, at best estimate, a 23-inch hen shooting past 4 pounds, and a beautiful fish. A perfect hook, a perfect release. Extremely proud of myself, and I have no proof. So you have to decide, is this guy telling stories? Again, that's up to you to decide. Honestly, I think what makes me feel the most proud and the most just downright professional about the situation is I walked away calling my shots. The fish were still biting. There were other fish that were not quite as large as that one, but that I had just drawn up, and there was actually a pair that I'd pulled in that I could have easily caught, but I left those fish there untouched intentionally. Right now, though, let's look at this clip from my nephew.
To imbue myself with some good luck on this cast. Cruise buddy, this next cast is for you. Let's see what happens. Cruise buddy, I got you a fish. Check it out, Cruiser. That one's yours. That's a 16. That's a 16 all day. Look at that one. Swims right off.
So, as I was saying about walking away while the fish were still biting, it kind of makes you feel tough. Calling your shots. For one thing, as you'll see later in this video, I already had one fish in tow, and I was feeling so confident I knew that when I crossed the beaver dam to the smaller pool downstream that I was going to once again be picking my shots, and there was a fish down there I had my eye on that I would go and harvest, and you'll see at the end of the video I in fact did. It was a really nice fish. We'll call it 18 inches. Took that one home, and we used it for a catch and cook.
Y'all ever walked across a beaver dam? A lot of fun. I hear some trickle over here. I want to go and check it out. Is it safe to walk on a beaver dam? Man, I saw my dad ride a motorcycle across a beaver dam once. You'll be fine.
And in fact, as I was beginning to say, the other reason for that calling your shots maneuver was to preserve the best quality conditions for when I will be hosting a guest at this location in just maybe we'll say about a week or so. I'm not going to give away the date, but yeah, looking forward to that, and I wanted to preserve the best qualities possible. As I mentioned, I had one fish in tow. I only needed to take 2 home. That was good.
As you can see, I'm going to be keeping this one. Been trying to trigger the strikes, and this little fish inhaled it, put the hook so far deep in that I wounded it really bad. Don't worry, even though its muscles are twitching, it's actually dead.
I'm just such a dude. Back here to where we started, I just hooked another about, not so big, really healthy fish, only about 14, 15 inches. That's 4 on the day, and I talked too much, and I didn't have enough camera and battery life. Everything's dying. This is going to die in a second, too. Anyhow, sitting at 4, looking like a typical day. I've got a couple more spots I like to cast. Going to do some exploring. Really a bummer I missed that last one.
For the first time today, I did see a little bitty fish, only a couple inches long. It swam a little different, which kind of made me think like maybe I did see some kind of forage species, but there's so many trout in here. Those things probably are few and far between, get gobbled up and just terrified hiding for their lives, right?
And in fact, after crossing the beaver dam and on my way to that last little pool where I harvested the 18-inch trout, I did see the first nice school of fathead minnows. Absolutely bait fish forage species, and that's a good thing to see. But I did bring a couple of fish home. One was a very small fish that inhaled the lure, and
Unfortunately, did the thing that I try to avoid most, damage the fish. It's often the one I want to keep, and it was a nice pan size. I was kind of hoping to keep a fish yesterday. And then I actually did hook the exact fish that was the one I intended to hook and bring home. I'd identified what I was pretty sure was a male in one of the very small pools, kind of like you can almost call it a pondlet within the series of beaver ponds, where there was a very small pool with a lot of fish in it, this one very big fish, and quite a few smaller fish, and I was kind of assessing that this is a good situation where those smaller fish are going to get stunted, hence a good taker. So I do have those two fish to show off, and the only cool thing that happened yesterday that I did manage to document somewhat successfully was I imbued my nephew's name to bring me good luck and take a couple casts, and that's when I hooked the second fish of the day. I do manage to get it on film, but barely in frame, and it's just another example of a better fisherman than I am a filmmaker. Pardon the city noise, it's that time of day. But yeah, in fact, I actually had a number of personal bests yesterday, just as far as like the highest average sized fish I've had at that location. Largest fish of the year, had a 23-inch hen that I released as the last fish I let go before catching that big male, and she was a solid 3 pounds or better, and I have no proof. So if you didn't want to believe me, you know, can't really blame you. So we are going to sit here and chop onions for a little bit, and then I'm going to make trout and papillote. Simply a fish in a bag, that's all that is. Make sure to save the giblets. Just kidding. Trout don't have giblets. And so if this is that bigger fish from that smallest pool that I wanted to remove, rolling in here what looks like about 17.5, 18 inches, then I feel pretty confident about my eyes still being fairly calibrated, and that larger fish I'm claiming that I let go was right around 22, 23 inches. And really, if this thing is probably still easily a 2-pound fish, I feel like probably the fish I let go was, I mean, it was definitely twice as heavy as this thing. It was more like a 4-pound fish, I think. I do want to say that I'm not always perfect at sexing the fish, but on average I'm pretty good about, especially with brook trout I'm excellent, but even with rainbows, typically I actually base it on shape. The males tend to be a little bit longer and more slender, and the hens will get real fat like a football. So it could just be a little bit of genetic variation or other factors, but truth of the matter is the football shaped ones make me think hen, and if it's not a hen, then it's just a big healthy fish and I still want it back in the water. Back to cooking the fish though. In this case, all I've done is actually use some kitchen shears to split the belly open and remove the guts. Because this is such a pristine body of water, I'm actually not concerned at all about toxics and heavy metals. But typically, and trout included, most fish, for some reason that, I don't know if it's gravity or the higher fat presence in the belly area, but right along here you want to remove on most fish, because I'm talking walleye, catfish, like just about everything I know of, the heavy metals and toxics actually concentrate in the belly, towards the belly meat. So you just remove this strip, especially if you're going to gill and gut a fish, which is what makes trout so wonderful, and boom, you're done. In this case, I just split it open. Next, we are simply going to place it on some parchment paper and go to work. This is where the end papillote comes into play. And while we could use a long list of vegetables to stuff the fish, typically you don't even end up eating the vegetables. Primarily I would say alliums, some version of onion is the right thing to do. If you want to get real fun and fancy, get some wild leeks in the spring to stuff a fresh caught fish. I've actually made a really nice meal before with leek stuffed trout and some fried chanterelles on the side, and that makes you feel like a big dog in the woods, you know what I mean? But in this case, I'm just gonna salt it with a little celery salt and then stuff it with the onion. Now, the one thing that you do miss out on in a recipe like this is we don't end up typically eating all this delicious skin on the outside. And when I have caught a fish from such a wonderfully pristine location, boy, I really enjoy eating that nice crispy skin off of a trout. And after that, I kind of just going to fold this thing up like a Christmas present. And then after that, we are just going to wrap it in a second tinfoil baggie, shiny side out. Probably a lot of you are completely familiar with this recipe. So if you look this recipe up online, depending on which web page you land on, you might see something like, and add some garlic and shallots to kick up that onion redolence. Truth of the matter is you're just wasting valuable ingredients. But other than that, we're just here to enjoy the taste of wild trout, and this does a wonderful job of, the steaming and everything certainly concentrates the flavors, but it's all fish. I mean, you would need so much other stuff in there to compare and overwhelm the fish flavor. It's impractical, so we're using the vegetables for their physical properties, not for the flavor. But I do think the salt matters. And while you're at it, I mean, celery salt just kind of matches the situation. And all we have left is to pinch and fold that top, give it a nice seal. But today, I'm going to throw a hard curveball for the cooking directions. This is where it should get interesting. Pinched and folded. So this fish, I am just going to pan fry and eat some of that delicious skin. And correct me if I am wrong, YouTube, but this very carotenoid-rich flesh is much more reminiscent of brook trout and brown trout that I typically encounter around here than the rainbow that I remember catching years ago. It's honestly been quite some number of years since I have hooked so many rainbows. Primarily my specialty is brooks. I catch a lot of browns, although that might not be true anymore. I've had a hard time with those the last couple of years. But again, to me, 15-inch pristine wild trout is almost exactly the perfect fish that I want for the pan. And hence why the trout and papillote is honestly probably a better recipe for both bigger and larger fish. Granted, you don't lose much larger by doing it pan style. I think for larger fish, the trout and papillote really gives a lot back. So, like I say, yesterday, easily the best outing of the year. I caught 6, same as the previous 2 outings, but in this case that was intentional. I caught my 6 and walked away with the fish still biting because I want to leave that hole not excessively pressured. And yeah, it makes you feel tough when you walk away while the fish are still biting. You're choosing your shots, But, I mean, us fishermen, right? It's up to you if you want to believe me on that big fish, but I believe me. Made my day. You know who did believe me though, YouTube? I actually have some new clients that I'm going to take to that location. I've got enough footage of it that they were impressed and want to get on it themselves. So I'm going to be taking that off my website. If you want to go fishing with me, I do still have some other places listed, and I'm always trying to add more, so don't worry, I'll put some more up. And tonight for our vegetable side dish, we are going to be having a sesame ginger roasted pork loin. Among the vids to not make the cut recently are a couple of me talking about, I've really gained a lot of information about the new spot with a lot of the very extensive recon I've been doing lately, and I'm getting very satisfied with what I'm seeing, and it's a pretty interesting picture, to be honest with you. I have now witnessed a lot more juveniles that are absolute proof that they're spawning in there within the last couple of years. And again, this is a population that's probably about 5 or 6 years trapped in that particular location, so it's pretty interesting. Got a lot better understanding of the feed, possibly seen a small amount of forage minnows in the main hole, and then in a hole that's devoid of trout altogether, small enough that there's none in there, but there were some forage minnows. I actually saw a huge population of what must have been fathead minnows. Oh yeah. I realize this isn't a gorgeous presentation, but that crispy fried skin is like an appetizer. It's a treat. Just wonderful stuff. Yeah, I lost the trout cheek, man. Jeez. And dang, if the trout cheek didn't pop out when I flipped it onto the pan, it's the most delectable part of the whole fish. Come on, get over here. Come on, come on. Get in here. Come on. Want treats? Come on. And now we are going to get back to the trout and papillote a la Subaru.
Boy, glad I brought that vegetable side dish along. Guy would have gotten hungry otherwise. So honestly, the a la Subaru part of the recipe, the trout and papillote, was a little bit of a fail. When I formally made this recipe, I had a Jeep J10 with an 8-cylinder, and on that V8, things cooked a lot better. It's about a 20 to 25 minute cook. In this case, I drove around for 2 hours in a thunderstorm, still didn't quite have it finished. And so, we brought it home and cooked it in the oven, low and slow, on 185 degrees. And now here is where I would like to offer you an example of a little pat on my own back, some real creativity. What I've done here is a little bit of a fusion. I am going to go and take that trout that we prepared initially as trout and papillote, but I did finish it in the oven, and then I used that protein, that wonderful trout meat, as a base for a very unique recipe that descends from Nebraska, of all places, but a little bit of a mom and pop's kind of old-timey food called a cheese Frenchie, and in fact they have a tuna cheese Frenchie. I've made a wild rainbow trout from pristine spring water, trout pond, cheese Frenchie. Okay, it's just a rainbow trout cheese Frenchie. That's all it is. Next on the menu, we have duck egg bottarga, although I would call this fast bottarga because I'm not actually going to spend months curing this stuff in salt. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to prepare it in the oven at 170 degrees, and these are just yolks separated on parchment paper and then seasoned with salt, garlic, and onion powder, and a little bit of smoked paprika. And after being careful to remove bones, I would say my biggest advice is don't overmix. So here are our prepared sandwich slices. We're going to put a little mayo and a slice of cheddar cheese onto each one. Carefully fill, but do not overfill. And then this is probably the most challenging part, is to batter dip them so that you're getting a good soak and an even saturation without overdoing it. And then into the cornflake crumble crust is the real key quality to a cheese Frenchie. It's going to impart a lot of the mouth feel and a lot of the real pleasure of the dish. So here we are, just dunking, double dipping, egg bath, and then again into the cornflakes crumbles. I like to pour it directly on after I put it in there, so I'm touching it less, and just it gets less mangled the less you handle it. But yeah, we do want to get all of the outside edges well covered too, and then we're actually going to fry these really carefully. It's a real pleasure food, but it's actually it's a bit labor intensive. Of course, if you were at a fryer, you could deep fry these. In a pan like this, I'm just gonna, both sides, but then I'm actually gonna go ahead and stand them up on end, as you can see here, so we get a crisp the whole way around. Finished product is some ooh la la silky, melt in your mouth, flavor rich. I mean, they're very delightful. It is a very oily, fatty food though. When I say rich, I mean, go easy on these things. You don't want to give yourself a bellyache. But here comes the complete meal. Voila. Enjoy. Bon appetit. And here we have a nahuatl souffle.